Welcome. This is Raina Nisus with the Season of Caring podcast, where we share stories of hope for family caregivers, breaking through the busyness and loneliness of life to see God even in this season. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Tenita Abraham. Tenita is a financial advisor with a passion for guiding and educating others through unexpected financial challenges in life. In 2014, as a single mother, she found herself making the decision to take in her father at the diagnosis of her father's further declining health. This 7-year journey, which defied an unimaginable number of odds, strengthened their bond and reshaped Tenita's life. Amidst COVID-19, the news came of entering her father into hospice and the expected months left in his life. With the news, she decided to leave her corporate career to care for her father full-time, launching entrepreneurial ventures and sharing the latter part of the journey on social media. Together, they shared cherished moments of singing and dancing, words of wisdom, promoted new business, and even his final vacation wish to Maui. Tenita is honored to share this remarkable caregiving journey on the podcast, underscoring the invincible power of love, faith, and resilience. Thanks so much, Tenita, for being with us today. I'm excited to talk with you.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your dad and what that last years of his life looked like for you.
Wow. My dad was a very strong, prideful man. And when my mother passed, before I even recognized it, all that strength that we saw came out of him. And I was left with the decision of dealing with my, I think at that time, 8-year-old son saying, we have to take care of granddaddy. We can't leave him. And that planted a seed that, you can't really, run from. And so through the years, he had actually been sick the year that my mom passed. He got better. And as soon as he got better, my mother went down, and then 2 months later, she was gone.
Wow.
So it was a shock. It was tough for everybody. But she had also told me some things that she was concerned about with his health, just that stuck with me to kind of let me know, regardless of what we have or don't have at the time, it's probably what I'm going to have to do at some point. So fast forward, she passed. I drove back and forth to my job from Charlotte to Columbia for a while, trying to balance that out. And eventually, after feeling like it wasn't working anymore, moved away and started trying to manage both. He had quite a few surgeries, some heart issues, quite a few situations at that point, and even stayed some time with my sister before he came back home. And then he was just lost without me. Like, especially in that generation, they're just lost, but they don't talk about things like that. They don't express it. And my father always said was like that triple whammy. He's a civil rights activist. He's been on the front line fighting. He's got articles and books and stuff written on him for stuff that he's did in civil rights. Then I didn't realize until after his death, he was drafted into the military at 14, which is unbelievable. And then he's a business owner his entire life, so he's used to being in control, and a Taurus. So if you really believe in signs or not, if you know a Taurus, you know that there's a common trait of being very bullheaded. He always kind of say, "Oh, he's a Taurus." It was like the joke with it. So I had all that together, and being the youngest of 3, and also a daddy's girl, I paid a lot of attention to him because I was not realizing it, but I was not comfortable with the norm of how things are versus how they should be and things like that. So I kind of adhere to a lot of you have to fight to make this because right is right. And you have to let people know that things are going to be right, that type of thing. But as I got older, that he and I bumped heads in that room. So you never would have thought that we would have ended up from there from all the times we bumped heads. I even started to join the business for a while and I quit that. Like there were a lot of things throughout the years that I can look back now, just 2 years after burying him and seeing that all of those things that happened even in childhood and growing up that I didn't understand, I didn't realize that those things is what kind of took me to be able to have the strength to ignore when he's kind of going out or I'm the daddy or, things like that. And because I got to the point where I was like, okay, I am the sergeant. It was a huge transition, but we made it work. We just made it work. Somehow, a lot of God, a lot of tears, made it work.
I think so many times we, as caregivers, have this expectation that we're never going to blow it or we're never going to, make a wrong decision or that it's going to be easy, that we always do the right thing or we always, whatever the right thing is. But that's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves. And the truth is we're all just human. And the person we're caring for is human and they were that way before they got sick or they aged or whatever. And a lot of times we expect them to be something they aren't capable of giving up authority. Whenever I think taking care of parent, you have to honor them as a parent. But there are times that you have authority. You have to take authority in making decisions. And that's hard. It would be hard. It's going to be hard for me to give up my independence and let other people make decisions. So I know that's hard for them too. I appreciate not painting the perfect picture because I think so many times that's what we hear is that it was good and you're thankful for it, but it was hard.
I ran from it for years. I think inside I knew the moment my son said that it was happening. So much I remember in therapy, it was a time where one of the therapists was like, you cannot take care of your dad. And I was like, okay, no. And even told him, you're not going to come, even in an argument one time, you're not going to come live with me until you're incapacitated because I can't handle you. We're going to fight each other and things like that. And it was like, and then all of a sudden I had to eat that.
Yeah.
I had to eat that. And even with that was some guilt. But just, I hear a lot of people say, well, my parents did this, my parents did that. It's not until you actually kind of see them, I think personally, from the people that I've already kind of talked through the transition to, it's not to actually see them in that, I guess, childlike manner, for lack of a better word, that you get a better understanding of what their intentions were in their parenting and how much they, because they're not thinking through how they're supposed to say it to you. You know what I mean? They're just talking. Well, I was always proud of you. Or, I really talked about this and, this and things like that are just more lax because now you're not thinking as that parent that has to have this image and control and things like that you're supposed to technically have as a parent. Now you're the person that I appreciate because regardless of all of that, you're the one that's here. And we went from one end to the other and kind of learning kind of what that was like and pray before I brought him in, talked to a pastor and everything. Like, I'm so scared. I don't want to do that, but it means it's going to mean a lot of sacrifice, especially having a, teenage boy and then my dad in the same household. And I'm raising both of them. And it was hard. You get to the point where you have to take away their control of a lot of things. It's not something you see or realize until you sit back and you're looking at them in their quiet moments and the innocence of everything just kind of radiate. And you get an understanding of, this is the human side of, the person you're caring for, whether it's your mom or your father. And this is the side that you always loved. You just wanted your love to come in you a different way but that person was really always there.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get the chance.
So for me, with my mom, I was a teenager when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so I never knew her as an adult to an adult. I didn't. You have a different relationship as a child to your parents, but eventually you should graduate to adult to adult. I mean, they're still your parents, but there's more evenness in that relationship. There's more give and take. There's more understanding if they're willing to drop their guard. I know when I started hearing stories from my dad and his sister about how they grew up and how hard things were, I didn't know that when I was a kid. I couldn't have processed that anyway. But, I literally had no concept of what their life was like until I started to hear those stories as an adult. And I think once you have that adult to adult relationship, you can begin to have more compassion for those things that didn't make sense before.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I hear people complaining about hoarding and that kind of thing. And I haven't had to deal with that, but I think that there's so much behind those kinds of behaviors. And even for your dad, he fought for all the respect he ever got. He had to fight tooth and nail for it. He wasn't giving it up. He wasn't. And that bulliness, that strong, hard shell was something that you probably never saw him drop until the point in which you were taking care of him. So it's beautiful that you did get to see that, and you did get to grow in compassion and understanding for who he was by seeing the sides he didn't show you very much.
Yeah. And I didn't know who he was at all until even the things in his past that he had done in the community and all that. For example, we were in the hospital and I was upset because it was my birthday and he's in the hospital my 21st birthday, and there's like Secret Service agents coming in, and I'm like, now of course I don't really understand what's going on, so I'm like, and they're like, well, can you leave the room? And I'm like, no. What? I'm a little bit of a scene. I'm my daddy's daughter. But then the person, probably shouldn't say who it was, but the person was, it's like, do you really understand who your dad is? And like, his daddy.
Exactly.
His daddy. And that's one of the articles that I did in another. And again, our generation of parents, didn't have social media that feel like it's okay to actually talk to your kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. They always kept that relationship and barrier up. And, it was funny. My sister and I, my parents were married at 17 and 18, and their first child was born at 36. They had this whole life, before we came into their world. But it was funny. I don't even know how old I was before I realized, actually, I honestly think it was when my mom passed away that I found out she was a career woman. She was a pharmaceutical buyer before she became a mom. And as soon as she had my sister, she quit her job and stayed home. And it was like their life started once we became a part of it, was the way they talked.
right.
And it was like, it took little tidbits of this information and that information to start putting that puzzle piece together. And I think by caregiving, the humanity is there. And that's what we need to be there in order to really be able to serve and love them well, is to really see their humanity. And that's seeing the whole picture. So,
and I feel like with what you're doing, because I've listened to a couple of the podcasts since we met, I feel like there's so many people that have not gone through this yet.
Yeah.
It's not talked about enough. The human part of it is not talked about. And with me being a financial advisor before this, I always talk people through it on that side. But who comes in and says, okay, so this is going to happen. This is normal. This is how you handle it. Or this is some things to think about. And, yes, it's going to be hard to see your mother or your father that way. But at the same time, there's ways to take advantage of, what you have in that moment and find joy in it. Like you said earlier, kind of going to something else you asked earlier, that was the biggest part of it for me was somebody said, once we found out like they gave her a few months, the beginning of January 2020, they document everything. And being that my father was I think part of the reason he wanted to live with me was because we had moved, I was the one that moved away from home.
Mm.
So at first, I was concerned about that. I knew it was going to catch some backlash because, people don't want to see him like that. But he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure people didn't know he liked to sing.
Yeah.
Look, people didn't know that he laughed the way he laughed or things like that. And that's that for, I think, a lot of people, especially our age, to see that kind of brings out the blessing in the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for people to get to the point of taking the fear out of it, to saying, you know what, I'm going to do it. we're just going to make it work. And that's the better decision. I mean, with obviously everyone's situation is different, but that's the best decision to be a part of that transition
Definitely.
than where you won't.
Whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So what would you say was most surprising for you with caregiving?
I would say that was really where I learned what the love of a parent was. I think that's what really made me a better parent. Oh, and dealing with some of the growing pains, let's say, of being a child in the household, especially being the only one because everybody was already grown, and then coming to being in a position to actually have that childlike relationship, but now he's kind of the child. I can't say that we had a laughing, playing, except for when I was really little.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, at first it started off, not something that somebody told me, but I decided that the dementia behavior, or the sundowners really, was not who he was. It was a spirit. So when I would get really, really anxious and start letting it control me or get to me, I would just yell at the spirit like, you casting out spirit. No, you're not my daddy. You are not my daddy talking to me like that, or whatever the case may be. And then just like that. So it was evidence to me that once you make the decision and you bring yourself back to that decision every time it gets hard, no, this is not who you are. You are not my daddy. Get out of my daddy. So I can have my daddy back. Then that was the game changer. Every single time, that was the game changer. It's hard, but it really was snap them out of it. So it was interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so there were things that I never would have thought, because I also didn't think through it happening. It was just a reaction. But I think there were things that in fear and frustration that turned into, a better transition throughout dealing with it to where it got easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Share one story of when God showed up for you in your caregiving.
One? The entire situation.
Yeah.
Okay. I would probably say the time that, because like I said, everyone always thought I made it look easy, but there was a moment where I had a procedure done. It went wrong and I was in the hospital, ICU, everything for quite a long time. And while he was away from me, he was in the hospital.
Oh.
Which most of the time when I was sick, he would get sick. And that was another testament to the connection that we had, regardless.
Yeah.
If he wasn't with me, if I took a break for so long, he would go into the hospital. But this time, I didn't know if I was coming back.
Right.
And one of the things that I said, I remember And those moments in the ambulance and then trying to keep you awake and things like that was like, God, this is not, no, this is not what you called me to take care of my dad, take care of my daddy. You blessed me with my son. I'm going to take care of my son. What I got to do, but you're going to have to,
do whatever you do, but you would get it done.
And that in itself, as I started, I had to fight back to therapy and walking and rehab and everything, now I also got a better feeling and understanding of how we're both at this point, we're walkers. Christmas.
Wow.
We had a race in the hospital. It kind of goes back to the experiences that come out of that just turns that leaf. So that was one of the moments where I know God showed up, was like, okay, you're not ready. I had to take you home. I told you I was about to take you home. And I wanted to see my mama, but I was like, not like this. And we got even closer in that moment because, of course, he couldn't understand why
where you were
home.
Yeah.
And then he saw me at the hospital and I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? And kind of had to, do what we need to do to keep him calm. But that was fun because it was, hey, now somebody who feels like I feel, we both can't walk. And that was something I always kind of remember that was kind of funny. Like I literally was just out of ICU and in a room and my dad is here with his walker and somehow something came up where we decided we're going to race down the hall and caused so much commotion in the hospital. But had that not happened, we would have known that through all the pain of even the family around and my neighbors even stepping up and taking care of the family because I'm big on Christmas. And all the other people in the hospital that saw that, that brought them joy just to see, we're going through this and y'all are really just up in here and making all this noise on Christmas. So, definitely a God moment. Definitely.
So share with us, what would be one thing that you would share that helps you to live content, love well, and care without regrets?
Something I'm still working on. There are a lot of things that I believe we say for ourselves, whether it's affirmations or just cliche things that get to seem cliche, but they're really things that you have to remind yourself in the moment. And that's really the time that's going to get you to the other side. Like I said earlier, the honor a father and mother all the days there. And you learn, that's one of those short verses that you learn in Bible study.
Yeah.
Or when you get in trouble. Like there's a lot of things that are the seeds that are planted that you may not realize that you need. It's just going to come back up and you have to be open enough and comfortable enough and rested enough and at least acknowledging that you need to heal enough to accept that. The hardest part of the final year with my dad was everyone's going through so much now, and I'm trying to bottle up what's going on in my household. And there's COVID out there.
Yeah.
And trying to be strong for other people again. And I did get to the point where I didn't want to take breaks. Because now it's much more risk to have somebody around.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I did fight for those breaks and my dad just said, I want you to live. That made it a lot easier to make sure that we had a good moment every day, a good silly moment every day.
Yeah.
Whether it was, Daddy, what's you watching the market? What stock should we buy today? Or, whatever the case may be. He was my office assistant. He did my commercial announcements for when I was going to go live and talk about something, he helped me with packages. Well, he didn't really help, but he did help me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And having him included in that made it easier for me. And where I thought I was doing it for him, it was really ended up being for us.
Yeah. The hindsight's always 2020, but I think that is one of the gifts that whenever in the moment you're doing everything for them, you're serving them. But once they're not here, you realize what a gift that time was because you have that to cherish forever. And nobody can take that away. And you wouldn't have it if that season hadn't happened and you hadn't stepped into it. So that's great wisdom.
And everything happens for a reason. If everything happens for a reason, and we're also taught that your journey is your testimony to help someone else.
Yes.
Then not only is that your healing, it's easier to heal when someone comes to you and says, hey, you changed my life, because I've never known anybody to be as open about whatever was going on and how it really was and how to just balance it all. And I'm not Superwoman. I was struggling. And I'll let you know, that y'all need to pray because, but I find solace in, you know what? I helped somebody. So how could you even sit in why me when maybe it wasn't about me?
There's a bigger blessing in the midst of it all than what we even imagine whenever we're willing to use it and share it and give what was given to us, give it to others. That understanding and compassion and wisdom. Any one last nugget of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners today?
From the caregiver side of things and the one that is used to being in control and having to back down myself to be cared for, just know that it's a part of life, no matter where you are, how much money you make, how much money you know. I mean, at the end of the day, once we start embracing the things that we don't talk about and stop with we don't talk about those things and those things don't happen, just like mental illness, like it's, that to me, our biggest deficit as Americans, like, or humans, like we have to come together to really address this is real. This is going to happen. There's no way around it. You can have all the apple cider vinegar or whatever you think going to heal you. But at the end of the day, you're not, a friend just said to me earlier, it's tough, but fair. And just deal with it the best way you can, because you're going to find a blessing in it in the end. Every traumatic situation I've experienced, and I'm not even 50 years old, there's a blessing in it in the end that I could look back on. It still hurts.
Yes.
But I'd rather have the pain with the blessing than, nothing at all.
Yeah, definitely. So as we're wrapping up here, how can people connect with you?
Right now, I am on social media. Probably the best way is Instagram. It's a long name. It's Building Legacies with Joy with an I. I do have some things coming out that are going to be giving more tips, not only from the financial side of being in this type of journey, but just coming from the personal experience side of it. And I'll be posting some information there for the future.
Okay, great. So thank you again for being willing to be vulnerable, honest, and just really share how God blessed you through this, as well as the struggles. We really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you. It was nice.
Listeners, thank you for joining us today for Stories of Hope with Tenita. This episode has been brought to you by Content Magazine, an online electronic quarterly magazine available today to help you find God during your caregiving season. Take that moment to take a deep breath, find Him, and then jump back into your caregiving life refreshed. It's available now at contentmagazine.online. A Season of Caring podcast has been created to share stories of hope for living content, loving well, and caring without regrets. If you have legal, financial, or medical questions, be sure to consult your local professional and take heart in your season of caring.